cannon. They're being brought down in the containers one by one, some still kicking and screaming. They're being loaded into the buses, and then they are taken away. But there is still, I would say, dozens of protesters left up on that roof, and now they still have that choice. Will they continue to resist, or will they realize that this really now is all over? Jim?
How much of a symbol is Kfar Drum really to the rest of the settlers' movement in Gaza?
Yeah, Kfar Drum was always one of the more hard-line settlements. A very religious community, one of the first settlements ever established in the Gaza Strip. It was founded in 1970. It was a kibbutz before the 1948 Israel's War of Independence. So before that, and that's why we saw those signs. Kfar Drum will not fall twice, because it was captured by the Egyptians during the War of Independence in 48, rebuilt in 1970. And this is a hardline settlement, very religious. These people are the ones who truly believe that this is their country. God put them here, and they're not going to leave without a fight. They've given it today to the police. It now, though, appears that it is winding up. The police have the upper hand on the rooftops here. They are removing them one by one. And this is a message, really, to the other settlements out there that may have been contemplating some kind of resistance against the police, some kind of violent struggle, that the police and the army will use a heavy hand against those who resist this evacuation. It must be said, Jim, we've said it over and over again over the last few hours, the people here inside this synagogue in Kfar Drum are not the people who live here. These are the protesters who've managed to get into the Gaza Strip over the last few weeks, even some over the last few months. They are the ones who were digging in, and these are the ones who are looking for some kind of confrontation with the police to try and vent their anger at Ariel Sharon and his decision to evacuate all 21 settlements from the Gaza Strip and 4 more from the West Bank. Jim?
John, half an hour ago, this was a siege with the ladders going up and army troops trying to get up to the rooftop, cut their way through that concertina wire that was strung out all along the rooftop there. What happens when they take them away? Does the battle, does the fighting stop at that point when they put them on board the buses, or does the struggle continue all the way as they're bussed out of the Gaza Strip?
Some of them, well, most of them, to be fair, most of them are going quietly. They're being carried by police. 1 or 2 are walking, and then they're being put on the buses. And then there are a few who have been screaming from the windows of the buses as they drive away. But right now it seems that the fight really has gone out of them. They're sitting on the buses. Their fate now awaits them. They will probably face, in all likelihood, criminal charges for this. They were warned that if they confronted the police, if they had violent clashes with the army, they would face jail time, as opposed to the protesters in Neve Kalim, who seemed much younger and made a deal with the police that they would be carried out, and there was minimal violent confrontation in Neve Kalim, certainly compared to what's been happening here at Kfar Drum. But now, as these people are bussed away and back into what is now Israel, these people will face some kind of criminal charges, Jim.
John, the IDF and the Sharon government have made a strategic decision to allow the press in to witness all of this. Has it paid off, do you think? Will it pay off?
As you know, well, we have to wait and see, really. I mean, what we're hearing from the Israeli government is one step at a time. We have the disengagement, and then let's see how that plays out. There's a lot of talk, a lot of intelligence around the traps that once Israel leaves the Gaza Strip, that there will, in fact, be a third intifada, that the struggle will move to the West Bank. Just want to hold that thought for a moment, Jim. I'm hearing from the police that the agent which was thrown on the police officers earlier this evening was in fact acid, which is why we saw so many of them running out in a great deal of pain and discomfort, removing their clothes and being doused in water. So it was acid which was thrown at the police officers, according to some of the police here. That's what they are saying now. Jim.
That certainly is something that is going to result in some criminal charges for some of those protesters. By and large, though, throughout the day, what we have seen has been, I think we could describe it as passive resistance.
Yeah, this certainly was not passive. This is what was expected of here, to be honest. The Israeli police and the Israeli army say they put plans into place for this. certainly if you look at the numbers of police and soldiers which have surrounded this synagogue, this building, the protesters on the roof would have to be outnumbered 30 or 40 to 1 quite easily, maybe even more. I mean, they were not taking any chances with dealing with these people on the rooftops. There have been injuries. We have seen police hurt. We've also seen a couple of the protesters hurt as well. But this was always going to be a difficult settlement to evacuate. They were ready for this. They knew that this was going to be the case. Having said that, the police did give the protesters many opportunities to leave without this kind of confrontation. They brought in rabbis, they brought in counselors, they spoke with them. Gideon Mir, the foreign ministry spokesperson, was here. There was advisors from the Prime Minister's office. The Army Chief of Staff was here. They all tried to deal with the protesters, convincing them that it was better to leave peacefully. They didn't agree. There was confrontation, and now these people are being taken away to face some kind of jail time. And the Israeli government really now is sending a message to all of those other settlers and the protesters who may be considering some kind of similar protest against the disengagement. They will be dealt with in the exact same decisive manner, and they too will probably face the same kind of criminal charges that these protesters will be facing after this confrontation today, Jim.
Just once again, John, if you can lay out the significance of this move by Israel, how it affects the United States on one hand, and how it's going to affect the perception of Israel in the Arab world.
For Israel, really, in many ways, it's giving it the impression that it's trying to move towards peace, that they're willing to give up Gaza. Ariel Sharon himself said, painful concessions. And here it is. Here these painful concessions are being played out in front of our eyes live on television. These are the kind of confrontations which Ariel Sharon warned would happen. This is the kind of pain which Israel would endure as it withdrew from the Gaza Strip. But you'll hear from the Israeli Prime Minister down that Israel is willing to make this kind of concession, is willing to go through this kind of national angst and pain for the good of the peace process. Now, what you hear from the Palestinians, of course, is this has nothing to do with the peace process. This is all about giving up Gaza because, let's face it, the Israelis never really wanted Gaza in the first place. There are 9,000 or so people who lived here, but compare that to the 250,000 settlers who live in the West Bank. It's nothing. So from the Palestinian point of view, this is all about giving up Gaza so they can hang on to the West Bank. But at least, as far as the United States is concerned, there is some good news to report on... Okay, at least there is some good news to report as far as the Middle East is concerned, and that is that settlements are being dismantled, that land is giving back to the Palestinians. There is something positive to come out of the Middle East, and that is something which will help George Bush and will help Ariel Sharon in the months and years to come, as the Israelis and the Palestinians try and work back towards the roadmap, Jim.
Now, we saw there, as you were explaining this to us, people being carried out, yes, but I saw one man coming out on a stretcher. Was that one of the protesters, or was that a member of the army?
As far as I could tell, that was one of the protesters coming out on a stretcher. He had the kippah on, he had the long side locks, which many of these protesters have. Some of the protesters have been hurt in all of this. They've been hurt by what looks like acid, according to the police, which was thrown on the police, and some of that may have come back on them. There's also been some struggles as well. Some people have been hurt during those struggles, so there have been a number of injuries here. At this stage, it appears that there is nothing serious, but we're waiting for confirmation on that from the police. We did see one police officer being carried away on a stretcher with an oxygen mask. He didn't look well. We're still waiting to hear what his condition is, Jim.
All right, John Voss, there you're looking at a live picture, Kfar Darom, a historic settlement in Gaza, a settlement that the Israeli army had expected they would have trouble with. You can see the protesters, most of them not believed to be actual settlers from Kfar Darom, but perhaps from the West Bank or other parts of Israel, supporters, sympathizers with the settlers movement, still holding out atop the synagogue. But really, it would appear that, as John Voss has told us, the Israeli army has the upper hand. Octavia Nasser is standing by with us right now. And as this has played out, we were talking to John Voss about it, about the significance, for the U.S., for international relations, but the Arab media watching this with some fascination too, Octavia.
Yeah, fascination and shock to a certain extent, Jim. It's very interesting to hear, for example, the Al Jazeera reporters express real shock, saying, look at the soldiers, they're crying with the settlers, pointing things out like this. But also, as this goes on and on, it seems that now the Arab media are changing the tone a little bit, and they're starting to look at this as a melodrama more than a drama. And as you pointed out, as Guy Raz and John Voss pointed out throughout the day, many of these people are believed to be non-Gazans. They are protesters. They are against the idea of disengagement, and they came here to protest the government's policy. So basically, Arab media focusing very much on that very point, and bringing in guests to say that this is, at this point, it's becoming a charade.
Does the rest of the Arab world, when they look at what's happening now, do they see disengagement as a victory for the Palestinian Authority or as a victory for Hamas?
Well, here's a good example, but just to give you an idea how things are portrayed. Al Arabiya, which is an all-news Arabic news channel based in Dubai, owned by Saudis, they're calling their coverage Gaza liberation. Al Jazeera calling it withdrawal. So the rhetoric is very important here. They're seeing this as definitely Israel pulling out. They don't see it as disengagement. They believe that it is the Palestinians that were able to drive Israel out. You still hear voices saying that Israel still has an interest in pulling out of Gaza. Some people saying this is just a matter of redeployment. This is not a pullout. This is not a disengagement. This is just a repositioning of troops. Others are saying that Prime Minister Sharon has a very clear plan. He gives Gaza, especially in this media, with this media attention, they're saying that he's going to use the media attention, the world media attention, give Gaza back, and then in return ask for, as someone said, ask for the moon, basically in reference to a big chunk of the West Bank and perhaps all of Jerusalem.
Now, blame Israel has been a basic component of the Arab media for decades, and this isn't going to change that. But how much is the Arab media focusing in on what comes next, and that is the Palestinians trying to take control of their own lives? And who's going to run the show? Is it going to be the elected leadership? Is it going to be the gunmen in the streets of Gaza?
And this is a question that's on the minds of many, many people on Arab media, both broadcast and print. You have, for example, a headline on Al Hayat newspaper this morning said, who is going to govern Gaza after the pullout? Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, or chaos? This is a very deep thought coming from an Arab journalist who is in Jerusalem, as a matter of fact.
Somebody's thinking about it.
Absolutely. And the idea of chaos is not new to Arab media. I mean, they look at the situation and they say, look, the Palestinian Authority doesn't have what it takes to govern Gaza. Hamas does, but they shouldn't be the ones running Gaza. Will Israel really let the Palestinians rule themselves? Can the Palestinians work together? Are they going to say, look, it was me that pushed the Israelis out, or no, it was me? Or are they going to say the Palestinians take full credit? Now the Palestinians are going to rebuild Gaza together without fighting over who's going to run Gaza. So no, that's absolutely on everybody's mind. The other thing is, Jim, I mean, you've covered the Middle East long enough to know the saying that Arabs agree to disagree. Well, on the issue of Palestinian territories and the Palestinian issue, the Arabs, all Arabs agree. And you can see this on their coverage today. Very interesting how all of them agree that Israel is an occupier, that the settlements are illegal, that this is good for the Palestinians, but yet it raises major questions as to the future of the peace process. They see this as a big test. They see Gaza as a huge test in self-governance. Will the Palestinians be able to run themselves? Because that